All right, let's talk about one of the most spectacular failures in the entire Three Kingdoms period, the warlord Yuan Shu. I mean, this guy had it all. Power, wealth, the most prestigious family name you could imagine, and he managed to burn it all to the ground.
Yeah, those were his last words. A self-proclaimed emperor, dying in some backwater town, literally begging for a cup of honey water that his own people couldn't even find for him. It's a pretty pathetic end, but honestly, it fits in perfectly.
So that's the big question, right? How does someone born with a golden ticket to rule the world end up as a total nobody? Well, to get it, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, because the seeds of his downfall were planted right from birth.
See, Yuan Shu wasn't just another guy trying to grab power. He was born at the absolute top of the food chain in Han Dynasty society. In his mind, he wasn't just a candidate to rule. He was the candidate. It was his destiny.
His family, the Yuan clan, was basically the most powerful, noble family in the entire empire. For 4 generations straight, they held the highest possible government jobs. So that name, Yuan, it was like the ultimate key. It opened every single door, and it fueled the one character trait that would end up being his fatal flaw. And here it is, the core of the problem. He had this deep, unshakable belief that his noble blood meant he was just better, that he was entitled to rule the empire. And this incredible arrogance, it became his own worst enemy, blinding him to what was actually happening around him at every single turn. Well, you can probably guess what happens next. A guy who thinks he's superior to literally everyone is, unsurprisingly, awful at making friends. In fact, he didn't just fail to make allies, he was a master at turning potential friends into bitter enemies.
And his most toxic relationship, it was with his own family. Just look at this breakdown. He absolutely despised his half-brother Yuan Shao, constantly calling him a servant's son just because Shao's mother was a concubine. This petty, snobbish feud wasn't just a family dinner argument. It would eventually split the entire anti-tyrant coalition and plunge the whole empire into a proxy war. This right here tells you everything you need to know. He was so self-sabotaging. Case in point, during the war against the tyrant Dong Zhuo, his own top general, the brilliant Sun Jian, was about to win a massive victory. So what does Yuan Shu do? He gets jealous. He actually withholds supplies from his own army, forcing them to retreat. He literally chose his own side's failure over seeing an ally succeed. And, he didn't learn his lesson. He then made the same kind of mistake with Sun Jian's son, the legendary Sun Si. Sun Si got so fed up with Yuan Shu's nonsense that he pulled off one of the smartest moves in the era. He traded the Imperial Seal, which Yuan Shu desperately wanted, for a few thousand troops. Then he just left. And he used those troops to build his own kingdom. Yuan Shu literally traded an empire builder for a shiny piece of jade. So now Yuan Shu has the Imperial Seal. And with it, he's about to make the single worst political blunder of the entire Three Kingdoms period. He didn't see it as a symbol. He saw it as a golden ticket.
You see, any other warlord would have used the seal to legitimize their actions, to gain political leverage, but not Yuan Shu. His arrogance and his deep superstition made him think it was a sign from heaven itself, a confirmation of his destiny. He completely mistook the symbol of power for actual power. So with this flimsy list of justifications, he totally ignored the smart, sober advice from his own staff. His registrar, Yang Sheng, basically told him, look, the Han dynasty is weak, but it's not dead. This is a terrible, terrible idea. But of course, Yuan Shu only heard what he wanted to hear.
And so in early 1970 AD, while every other major player was still, at least publicly, fighting for the Han, Yuan Shu did the unthinkable. He declared the Han dynasty over and proclaimed himself the very first emperor of his new Song dynasty.
The reaction was not what he expected. It was immediate, it was universal, and it was absolutely catastrophic for him. He had just painted a giant, glowing target on his own back. By committing open treason, he instantly became public enemy number 1. He gave every other warlord, his brother Yuan Shao, his supposed ally Liu Bei, and the guy he'd let go, Sun Si, the perfect excuse to unite and crush him. He made it not just legal, but popular to want him dead. And while his so-called empire was getting attacked from all sides, what was happening to his people? Well, the historical records are pretty horrifying. His crazy spending and crushing taxes, on top of a drought, led to a famine so bad that people were forced to resort to cannibalism to survive, all while Emperor Yuan Shu was feasting in his palace, totally oblivious to the nightmare outside his walls.
So, as you can imagine, it all fell apart. Defeated, abandoned by everyone, and completely broke, our emperor made one last, truly pathetic move to try and save his own skin. Just think about that for a second, the sheer humiliation. After spending his entire life looking down on Yuan Shu, his very last act was to try and give his brother the title he had stolen. And you know what? He didn't even make it. His path was blocked, and his own former generals, who are now just bandits, robbed him of what little he had left and told him to get lost. You know what his great rival Cao Cao called him? A skeleton rotting in a tomb. And it's just brutally perfect. Cao Cao saw that Yuan Shu was already dead, hollowed out by his own arrogance, just waiting for someone to push him over. He had no real foundation, no loyalty, no power. Really, Yuan Shu's whole life is this timeless warning about what happens when you confuse privilege with ability. He was born with every single advantage you could ask for, but he just didn't get a fundamental truth. A fancy name and a lot of money are not substitutes for wisdom, for building alliances, or for basic competence. He proves that a crown, without the power and the respect to back it up, is just a hollow, worthless piece of metal. Which really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is real power something you're born with? Or is it something you have to earn?